All right, welcome back to Waste Some Time with Jason Green. I am Jason Green, bringing you brand new interviews right here on YouTube. Uh, Yesterday, I spoke to Keith Roth and Andy Chernoff of the band The Dictators. Keith is also a Sirius XM personality, and we got to talk about New York City and punk rock, some of my favorite topics. My guest today has some similarities to that as well, and is also living proof that I'm a bad judge of character. When I first heard about Tommy London, I said, "Why does the guy who looks like Brian Setzer hosting the hair metal shows on Sirius XM?" And it wasn't until, and I saw him in passing, but it wasn't until we sat down and spoke somewhere in the middle of nowhere that I said, "You know what? This is a really cool guy that I have a lot in common with, especially growing up in New York." Most of you know Tommy from his time on Sirius XM. He's still on there probably every day. Turn on Sirius XM. He's probably on now. He's going to be on in 10 minutes in the middle of the night. He's the hardest working man in satellite radio. But many of you may not know about his music career, which is probably his first love and what came first. His album Emotional Fuse is available now. We're going to talk to Tommy about that and more right after this. Just wanna waste some time with you. Time seems too good to be true. Nobody out there to waste time with that. All right, please welcome Tommy London.
Hey. I got the hair for you. I got the sets of hair for you here today, too.
Yeah. Well, I was saying to myself, Eddie Trunk doesn't exactly look like Brett Michaels either. But what the hell do I know? I'm glad that you're able to join me, and we should be warned that where you are, weather is really bad right now, and expecting power outages.
Yeah, I'm not used to it. I'm a New Yorker. I recently moved to California. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? Now we got windstorms and power outages. And so we'll be okay. We'll get through it.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I'm glad you're here. And as I said, I just became familiar with your career, and I listened to the album Emotional Fuse and really enjoyed it. And I think that other people will enjoy it. I think it's a bit of a pop punk. And I think that they're catchy songs that I think anybody can listen to. We're going to talk more about that. But, you sell a shirt and it says, "Who the fuck is Tommy London?" which is, in the Mick Jagger vein, obviously. Right. And it's a good place to start because maybe somebody watching wants to know, well, who the fuck is Tommy London? So, Tommy, tell me where you grew up and how you got started in this insane world.
I was born in Queens, Astoria, Queens, New York. I was raised in a small town in Pennsylvania called Kennett Square. It's the mushroom capital of the world. Not those kind of mushrooms. I get asked that all the time. Portobello, that sort of thing out there. I got involved with music when I was probably 12 years old. I'll never forget this. It was around Christmas time. I remember sitting by the Christmas tree reading comic books. And my dad said, "Hey, you're always going to be a bump on a stump." I think he meant bump on a log. I'm pretty confident that's what he meant. But he said bump on a stump. I go, "What does that mean?" Because I didn't do anything in school. I didn't play sports. I played sports in the backyards and the streets with all the other kids. But I was never one to do anything in school. It was strictly school, go home and read comic books and whatnot. So he said to me, he goes, "Why don't you be like Elvis? Play guitar. You'll pick up the girls." And I was like, "Well, I like rock and roll. I listen to, music all the time. I never even thought about playing an instrument." So I went for guitar lessons, and I learned a few chords on guitar, but I just wasn't grasping it, But my teacher would teach me on piano, and I could see the piano. I just couldn't see the guitar. I couldn't see that, E minor chord, but I saw the E minor chord on the piano. So I quickly put the guitar down, went for the piano. And then from there, I went into becoming a singer and things like that. And then eventually, many years later, I felt in the hometown I was at that just like any hometown, I guess, there's only so far you can go. And I felt that I needed to venture out and go to New York City, which was only 2 hours away from where I grew up. My whole family is actually from New York. So I was very familiar with the turf going out there. And I went out there in '98. And been there ever since until this year when I moved to California.
Yeah, you've You made the big move, and that's what. Sometimes you can outgrow New York. It's always there, and then also you had a you have a relationship, and sometimes you got to choose. If you're obviously you're in a relationship with Britt Lightning, a Vixen, and
Right.
that's how
Yep.
we first met because I see you on the road so often. When you're able to go out there and do some of these fun events, and you guys remind me a lot of myself as far as going out and seeing all the cool things to do. Touring could be so boring if you don't. We were talking about Michelle and I went to Graceland. I was saying you guys are on your way to see all these cool things. That's the great thing about being able to tour with your partner as well, is you get to
Right.
do things that maybe you wouldn't normally do, and maybe somebody else could pick up the airfare, because you're
Yeah.
there for work.
That's always a
Which
perk. Yeah.
always always a perk. But so I left New York December 31st, 1999, Y2K. I got a cheap ticket and came to, because no one wanted to fly. Everyone was so scared that
Yeah,
this was
right.
the end of the world. And I came to Las Vegas. But growing up in New York, there is a scene, and there's a scene that everybody talks about. There's the old days, there's the CBGBs, things like that, even older Studio 54, stuff like that. But there was a scene when you got there as well, and a lot of the venues, and you became sort of a personality in those venues. I was trying to think of the word. It's not socialite, but I was trying to think of the word because you became a fixture in that New York sort of club scene and started throwing parties, right?
Yeah, well, when I moved to New York, first off, like I said in '98, it was tough because where I'm from and I played in bands, I always formed a band. I
Mm.
never joined a band. And now here I am, in New York City, don't even really know anyone, especially in the music scene. I picked up the now defunct Village Voice, which you're probably familiar with.
Oh yeah.
Which Village Voice was, man, that's what you picked up to find who was coming to town and who was looking for a band or musicians, whatever. And I remember I went through so many auditions, stories I could tell you, man, that were just insane. I remember this one band I jammed with. I went in, I said, "Hey, it's Tommy London, whatever." And the guy, he wanted a British singer. And all because my last name's London doesn't mean that I'm a British singer, right?
Wow.
He gave me, it was Oasis, I forget, all these, not Oasis, it was Who songs and a bunch of other stuff. And I sang them. And then he was like, "Well, can you sing with an accent?" And I go, "But that's not how I sing." So it was just ridiculous stuff like that that kept happening. And then I decided just to take the bull by the horns and form my own band, in which I eventually did call the Dirty Pearls. But it took some
Right.
time for me to
Yeah.
really get to know the scene, the people on the scene, and who I wanted to poach from each band. And as I was doing that, since they really didn't know who I was or what I was about musically, I would say to them, "Listen, you can be in the band you're in. Just try this out with me." And that's how I sold them at first. And eventually all their bands fell to the wayside and the Pearls got the rise. And at that time in New York, we were headlining like the Bowery Ballroom. We were selling out like 700 seaters in New York for a local band. That was a huge deal. And I mean, we opened for Kiss. I like to say Kiss closed for us. And then
Mhm.
we played with likes of Vince Neil. He did a solo tour, The Darkness, Cinderella, Scott Weiland, Cheap Trick, just to name a few. And it was wild. Though the band never got signed or went on some world tour, it was just amazing to be over these artists that I've always admired. I never thought in a million years that would happen, you know?
Yeah, you
And that
definitely
was really
created a
cool.
local buzz for Dirty Pearls, and people still listen to it and talk about it. It's funny, Kiss met out of the Village Voice as well, such a New York thing. I
Right.
believe Israeli's ad comes out of the Village Voice. I remember it would come out, I think, on Thursdays. You might remember better than me. But we would go down to the newsstand and pick up the Village Voice and find out what concerts were going to be in town. And then you look at if you were in a band or you wanted to be in a band or you wanted to find a rehearsal space, whatever it is you needed was in the Village
Yeah.
Voice. Uh, and it's a shame that it doesn't exist anymore. But now people are, go on their phones for that kind of information. So you started building your following through Dirty Pearls. Tell me a little bit what else was going on in New York for you at that time.
Yeah, so I was in the band. We started off just playing like the small rooms like Arlene's Grocery and things like that, if you're familiar. And then from there, we would always hustle, man. We would always be out on the street giving out flyers, you know, a la the Sunset Strip in Hollywood, though it wasn't
Mhm.
quite like that, but that's where we got that hustle mentality from. We would go out late at night, hang posters up. We mentioned the Village Voice. When it would drop, which was either Wednesdays or Thursdays, like you said, maybe early Thursday mornings, we would have a stack of flyers and we would go to the Village Voice. What would you call it? Where they had those little things on the street that held the Village Voices,
Oh
the
yeah, the like a news dispenser, like a
yeah,
paper
yeah, the
machine.
news dispensers. We would go there. One guy would look out while the other guy would throw flyers into the music section of the Village Voice.
Mhm.
And we would hit the ones all around the venues. And we would just hustle. And there was 5 guys, and each guy was doing his part with promoting, and it built the band up to a point where it was just really a fun time. And you know what? It's funny you mentioned that there's different parts of New York or timelines of New York that people will go, oh, you know, it used to be like this and whatnot. Oh, it's not as good as it used to be. And you don't realize how good you have it until you're out of it and look back upon it. That I found really interesting because when the band was doing their thing and there was kind of a mini scene, like I'm not going to say it was like a CBGB scene by any means, but there was something going on for sure with all the bands and the parties and whatnot. But you didn't realize you were in it until you're out of it. Does that make sense?
100%. There's a quote, and I think it's from The Office, the TV show The Office. And he says, I'm paraphrasing, you don't realize it's the good old days until they're gone, that you're living in them, you know, and that is the
Right,
case. You're doing it, you just assume this is how it's going to be forever. Greg
right,
Steele from Faster Pussycat once did an interview, and he said that getting signed and being successful was like being in your house, and it's like the Wizard of Oz, and you're in a twister, and it spins around and it's crazy. And then at the end, just drops you right back where you started. And I think that that's a metaphor that makes sense because you don't realize that you're in the middle of it. And I always tell people, stop and smell the roses. My punk band did a show opening for the Vibrators at the Whiskey, and it was like the 40th day anniversary that Johnny Thunders played there. And I said, you know what? For once, don't worry about business so much and look around and enjoy how cool this is. And that's good advice for anyone because sometimes you think, I'll be doing this for the rest of my life. And then life
right,
can change. And obviously, pandemics and things like that happen that force life to change.
right. That's true. Very true.
And so you started becoming, like I said, a fixture around New York. And you know, you were a personality and started. When did the clubs and the hosting and the parties start to happen?
Well, so we went on a tour. The band went on a tour, and when we got back, we all didn't have a job. We had no money or anything, of course. And I remember my guitar player going, "Man, what are we gonna do? We gotta figure out how to make a quick buck." And I was like, "Hey, you know what? I'll reach out to that Arlene's Grocery bar, with the first bar we ever played at,
Mhm.
and see if we can do a residency there. I'll get a sponsor." I knew the hustle, you know what I mean? And I was like, that's exactly what I did. I got a sponsor. We did a residency for every week, and we were able to make enough money to stay afloat for that month until we figured out how we were going to have normal jobs once again, bartending and whatever, working in a recording studio, one of the guys, whatever it was, And from that, after that was over, the club owner of Arlene's was like, "Hey, I would love for you to do this, every month, once a week." And I said, "Well, I can't do it with the Dirty Pearls because we have a lot going on, but different things going on. But I'd be down to do something like this." And it was her just believing in me in doing it that I did that particular party for 11 years. And then I would do other parties as well around New York, always focusing around bands and rock and roll. That was always the theme. Um, and that's where it kind of was the springboard for it all. And it was that party was called the $5 Rock Show, $5 to get in, and you saw 4 or 5 bands. The bands got 100% of the money, and the secret was always, and I'll give this to anyone who wants to get into that kind of thing. If you're going to pitch it, you always pitch it on the nights that are the slowest nights. They'll give
Mhm.
you the fun. If you go in there for a Thursday through Saturday, it's going to be iffy.
Oh, Tuesday.
Yep.
Yeah.
Tuesday or Wednesday, you'll get whatever you want because they got nothing going on. And that's what I did. And in New York City, as you know, like everyone who lives there and is in that scene. They go out Sunday through Thursday, you know, or Monday through Thursday, and they're not going out Friday, Saturdays. So you can always get all those, as I would call them, the New York City vampires are going to be out on a Tuesday night. You know what I mean? And they'll come to the party. So it all worked
It's
out.
great.
It was a lot of fun.
It's great that you use these old school methods. You know what I mean? Sometimes people look at things like, it's something new. Well, no, those things worked. Flyering worked. Hosting, getting a place to let you host for the night, charging at the door worked. Ricky Rackman, made a career out of Cat House, which I think was on a Tuesday night. These kind of on the Los Angeles, obviously, side. But so it's great that you use those old methods to sort of get out there. And if you're consistent, as you said, the one venue lasted 11 years. If you're consistent, people will start to know you and start to ask more about you. And maybe they'll
Right.
start to look at your music as well, even though you did have a reputation from the Dirty Pearls. People were knowing you, but you're building the audience more and more. How does Sirius XM come into your life?
So I'm with the band. I decide what was going on with the band was it just ran its course after a while, like anything else. We always came fourth in inches from the move, a record deal, the local radio station playing the song, and then they went under. It was always something, and eventually it just ran its course. And that's the hardest thing, by the way. One of the hardest things is realizing when something runs its course. And this could go with anything from a band to a relationship to an apartment that you love. Sometimes you just got to step outside of the box and be like, I need to call quits on this. And the writing on the wall for me was that each guy in the band was off doing other things, and I was giving 110%. And I was like, well, maybe it's time for me to go off and do something else too. In which I went solo and made the solo record. But in the midst of making that record, a friend of mine, I have all this random knowledge about music. I'm sure you're the same. I could tell you who wrote what song. I could tell you who played on what song. What's the first track on this record? What's the first track on side 2 or whatever? It's just like stuff for the trivia night down the street at the local bar. So I thought. And this guy said to me, a friend of mine, he's like a casting agent. And he was like, we were just shooting the shit. And he was like, man, you know so much about these bands. I was like, yeah. I go, I just grew up on reading the inside of the CD booklets and whatnot. He says, man, you'd be great at Sirius XM. I said, oh, I would love a job like that. I've never done anything in radio. And he said, well, I know Scott Greenstein, the president of Sirius XM. I'll put you in touch. Bro, you know how many times I've heard this sort of thing? Living in New York City or anywhere. Hey, I'll get you in touch with this person or that person. I'm like, yeah, okay. I just kind of write it off. And no sooner said than done. 2 days later, he had me on a text with Scott Greenstein. Not even an email introduction, like a text, like a buddy does, And he invited me to the studio in New York. He said he wasn't looking for anyone, but he would like to meet with me. And that's when I thought I wasn't getting the job. So I was kind of like, whatever. And I go into the meeting, and we hit it off, and he learned a lot about my knowledge of the bands, and he gave me weekends right away on Hair Nation and Ozzy's Boneyard. And then now I'm on, like you mentioned earlier, 2-3 times a day on those 2 channels, as well as Classic Rewind.
Now, was glam and hair metal your forte? Was that something that you were really into?
Oh yeah, I've always been into the 80s rock stuff, the hair metal stuff and heavy metal and all that shit, from everything from like Ozzy, Maiden, Judas Priest to Motley Crue, Poison, and Faster Pussycat, RATT. Yeah, all that. That's what I was raised on. All that stuff. Love it.
So I know a lot of people watching listen to Sirius XM. I think it's the best place to listen to music. What is the point of hearing these awful commercials? And if it wasn't for cars, I don't think radio would even exist anymore. I'm talking about terrestrial radio. You want to listen to the songs you want to hear. And what I like about the channels that you're on is, there's not too much of Tommy London. I like some anecdotes. I like that you know your stuff, but I also don't want to have hours of a phony morning radio guy. Look, I grew up in New York on Howard Stern, like I'm sure many did. And I can't stand the people who go, good morning, everybody, and like 505, 100 degrees, it's going to be a hot one, all of that nonsense. You don't get that on Sirius. And you told me that Sirius doesn't really want that. Isn't that correct?
That is correct. They're not looking for a Wolfman Jack or a giggity, giggity, all right. They don't want that. They just want you to be you. And it's funny because I don't listen to FM radio anymore. But when I rented a car or something like that, I'll have it and I'll be like, oh, let me just hear what's going on. And those DJs still do it. You're right. The weirdest thing I hear, and now that I mention this, maybe you'll notice it, I'll hear these DJs talking about whatever. And instead of going into a song, they'll go into the commercial break.
Right. They're talking about a commercial. Yeah.
That's
Nuts.
the weirdest thing to me. It's like you're talking, whether I want to listen or not, and now you're going to go into something I definitely don't want to hear, which is a commercial break. That just boggles my mind. And but it's a lot of the stuff you said, like the time is now 5:05. I can do the radio voice if needed, but
yeah, and well, you never know; it could come in handy. But also, the playlists that are based on terrestrial radio are redundant to say the least. You could turn on the radio at any time, and you will find some degree of Dave Grohl. You're going to hear Nirvana, or you're going to hear the Foo Fighters, and it's constant. And it's not just them; it's a lot of these other things. You're going to hear the same things. Yesterday, we're in the car, and "Hunger Strike" by Temple the Dog is on. I hated that song when it came out. I'm sure a lot of people liked it. But I was just like, wow, do we really need this again 30 years later? How did this crack the playlist for drive time? And so what I like about satellite is that you can choose what you want to listen to. You want a channel that just plays music and doesn't have any talking? You can find it. You want deep cuts? Because I like now there's Hair Nation deep cuts. Which I think is kind of fun because you hear stuff that you don't know and maybe turns you on to something that you didn't know. I say all the time, young people are discovering music at a different pace than the way we did. We went out and saw a record cover and I'm going to try this one, or heard a single.
Yeah.
Now you play songs. There's young people who go, wow, I love this band. I'm going to add that to my playlist. I'm going to look more into this band. And so it's a fun thing to do. I know I listen to try to guess the songs before they come on. I bet a lot of people do that. Like the first, name that tune. How many notes before I can tell you that that's "Hang Tough" by Tesla? Which is also the Mountain Song by Jane's Addiction. If you're scoring at home.
Oh, that's wow. Yeah,
very similar. Yeah. But it's fun to listen to those songs, and for people who weren't there, this is a chance to get to know that music because you see it. You're out and about. You see how young the audience is. And for those of us who were there, it's fun to hear these songs that sometimes we forgot about. So do you choose what you play? Do you get a playlist? How does it work?
So I can only play with the cards, that I'm given. So yeah, we'll put the playlist together because I'll have, like you said, there's the deep cuts channel. I can't go too deep. At the end of the day, the main channels like a Hair Nation, Ozzy's Boneyard, even a Classic Rewind. Now, all those channels and the ones I haven't mentioned, like Lithium and whatnot, they all have a deep cuts channel. So you have that option. There won't be an on-air personality there, but you'll get deeper cuts. On the main channels, they're mostly, I'll say top 40, Hair Nation, top 40 of the hair band stuff. Though, as of late, they have opened up the selection. I've been able to choose songs to throw in there that weren't in there. And that was a fight that the hosts were going for. We were lobbying for that for a while. We have a new manager of the channel, program director, who is amazing. His name's Sean, and the listeners would write in all the time saying the same thing. Motley Crue. There's a huge band on the channel, Motley Crue, and yeah, you're gonna hear "Girls, Girls, Girls." You're gonna hear "Kickstart My Heart," but they have other tracks on those records.
Sure.
That are just as known. Here was what my fight was. My argument, I guess. The people who listen to Hair Nation own these records. It's a niche. You have to like this genre. And if you grew up with it, you know every song. I mean, you had Guns N' Roses Appetite. You know every song from start to finish. Just play them all. You're not going to miss. And like I said, they listened. And so now we have a much more expanded catalog, which is great. So I'm hoping you noticed.
Yeah, I notice it. I noticed songs now that are more fun. Look, the bands are huge. Like you said, these bands are so big, we know most of their songs. I would rather hear Knock 'em Dead Kid or 10 Seconds to Love from Motley Crue than girls, 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 or
Right.
go away mad or whatever. So it is fun that you start to hear some different cuts. It's fun to have um, the on-air personality sort of guide you through it. And like I said, you talk about what you know, and it's not rocket science. You talk about these bands and what's going on with them. Is there ever a song that you go, "There's no way I want to play that"? Like, do you have the choice to pass on things?
Yo, yeah, I could pass on a song. I've never had I'm trying to think if there's a song that I'm just like, ugh, I don't want to play that one. I don't think that's ever been the case. Maybe if something was like over the top, like a Living on a Prayer or Pour Some Sugar on Me, that I think is probably on every 80s channel on the dial and then
Right.
some. But I never, but I always, you know what I always say to myself when those songs come up, and I think they're great songs. I'm not knocking those tunes, they're staples for sure. Um, is there someone out there listening who's tuning in and knows nothing really about the music, and this might be the song that ropes them? So to me, it's
I
like a
think
tool.
I think it's the right attitude. Working with cover bands here in Vegas for so long, the band we'd always say, "Oh God, pour some sugar on me," and I said, "Give me a million pour some sugar on me," because every night it makes somebody happy in that audience. I might not want to ever hear it again, but the people will always get up and dance and have a few drinks and celebrate. And same thing with the radio. Maybe there's someone who tunes in and goes, "Oh, I know this one," and then maybe they'll stay for something that's new to them and support this genre of music. So I hate to pull the curtain back and see the man behind the screen on the like the Wizard of Oz, but so I'm fascinated how it works. You're not actually sitting there listening to this music. Do you record all your ins and outs, and then later they put the music in?
Well, sometimes it's live. Like we have the choice. Like a lot of times, like I can be right to the hour and do it. I've done that before. And then there's times where, you can record ahead if there's something going on. If I had to go on the road or I'm hosting a festival, a lot of times I'll do it backstage at a festival if there's a spare room, and things like that. I try to do it as close as I can because, well, if just in case of a newsworthy item, I like to have some fresh material. If all of a sudden, Nikki Sixx threw his bass into the audience and some craziness happened, I want to be
Yeah.
able to talk about it or whatever. Or someone just announced a big tour, yada yada yada. So
I think there's something about being live that feels like radio. It feels like WKRP in Cincinnati. You're there and you're involved. And now, do you go to the Sirius XM office?
well, that's interesting. Before the pandemic, I was living in New York. And I would have to go to the studio, which is located right across the street from Radio City Music Hall there. I would have to go there and do the shows. And then when the pandemic hit, they gave us the equipment for our homes, which is fantastic because it's a laptop, all the software's in there, the microphone, and now I travel with it. So if I'm going to Vegas for a weekend, I can do the show out there. I was just on a High Seas Rally cruise last week. I did the show on there every day. So the pandemic was a double-edged sword for a lot of things. In this case, for me, it was not having to go to the studio because sometimes you have to wait for. There's not like a Hair Nation room, we share with everyone else, so you have to wait until it's open. You have to reserve the time, and that was sometimes a big pain in the butt. So, yeah, if you get there and you have to wait, it's like, come on, I got to do this show, and so this really helped get some breathing room to take it into your home there. And you can still go into the studio. I've done it. I've gone in.
Yeah. The illusion is still there. If you're in your
Right.
car, in your house, you feel like Tommy London is sitting around with a stack of vinyl and he's putting it on, he's playing you. And I think that, look, I'm older, but I think that that's how people want to picture it, that, hey, he's in there. And like you said, sometimes you are live, sometimes the other personalities are as well. But I think that this format is reaching new people. At first, everyone thought, if people are going to pay for radio, it was the big question: is this going to happen? Howard Stern was a major acquisition. A lot of huge talent followed, and now I think that you rent a car, most likely you'll have satellite radio in it. And you buy a new car, you're going to have it, and it's become easier to access, and it's been a great thing for you because now you're out hosting these events too. I saw you at the M3 festival, and What was we met at Retromania? I mean, we met a few times, but it's where we formally talked. Where
Right.
the hell were we? Do you remember?
That was Missouri.
Oh, Branson. Yeah, right. Is that
Branson,
right?
Missouri. Yeah, Branson, Missouri.
You see
Yep.
these cities, and no offense to any of these cities, but boy, you go from day to day. It's hard to remember. And but you were hosting that. It was a fun event that hopefully they can continue. It was tough.
Yeah. I was told they're going to do it again this next year, and they've tapped me on to host it. No word as to who's going to be performing there yet. But yeah, so hopefully I'll see you there again. I don't know. That was with
Yeah,
this.
yeah. I mean, like I had a good time, and we learned that they serve ice cream at 11 p.m. in the lobby. So if you want to
I,
catch up,
you know what, man? That was the first time, and you've probably done. I know you've done more touring than me. Uh, that was the first time I was ever at a hotel. I'm used to having breakfast in the morning. They'll give you the breakfast during the morning. But where they announced that, yeah, from like 9 to 11, there's a dessert buffet.
I've never seen it in my life. Yeah, I was like, what is happening? When we went to Graceland and we stayed at the guest house at Graceland Hotel at like 10 p.m. They serve peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and
Oh
hot
my God.
chocolate, like in the lobby or in chocolate milk. And no banana though. They didn't get it completely right. But I just thought sometimes these hotels have strange things. But that little quirk was sort of fun.
Yeah, it was
It
fun.
was it's a weird event, and you get thrown out there, and some days were more well attended than others, and you've got to do your thing and sell and be the party leader.
Yeah, I gotta hype them up, man. And you know what? Since I fronted a band for so long, that's really like a training ground. You go out there and you look at the audience, and you just know what's going to work. At least I do. What's going to work, what's not going to work. How far can I push them? How far can I pull them in? And you just have to know that boundary, and then just move on. And if you get them, I remember at Branson, I was like, who would you guys like to see here next year? And they were all just yelling. That told me that they were enthusiastic about this festival in their town, even though I
Mhm.
couldn't even hear half the ones they said, except in the front row. Then I started shouting them out. I hear the yays and nays. What do you think about Cheap Trick? I hear about some yays and nays and the darkness or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, but it's fun, man. I enjoy doing the hosting thing. And the one thing I noticed, and you brought this up, um, I was at M3. I think it was not this year, but last year. Not this past year, but year before is when I noticed it. I look out in the audience and I saw these younger kids, and by I don't mean a parent bringing a kid. I'm talking teenagers to early 20s,
Yeah.
dressed like it's 1987.
Mhm.
And I was like, is this some sort of cosplay thing? So I went out into the audience and speak with them. And they knew who I was. They listened to me on the radio. They knew every artist in every musician in each band. They knew every song. And I asked him, I said, "Oh, you're into all this music?" They loved it. It wasn't a cosplay thing. It was their vibe. They wanted to feel the music. They wanted to be a part of it. And it was really cool. And I just thought that was really awesome.
Yeah,
Have
I
you
see it.
noticed that at a lot of shows?
Oh yeah, I see it every city. The festivals more, but you see these young people who really glam up. I thought the same thing. I thought it was sort of a cosplay, or maybe they're making fun of it. But no, these people are passionate. They know their things, and they're learning these bands. And it's a testament to how fun the '80s were, and the music, and how unfun. I don't know if that's a word, but things are now. I mean,
Right,
no one goes, you know what? I'm gonna dress up like Linkin Park.
right.
I'm
You're
put on my
right.
Pearl Jam. I'm put on my good Pearl Jam outfit.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see young people keep that music alive and carry the torch. I say all the time, we're running out of time to see live music. I went to see David Gilmour at the Hollywood Bowl. I don't know how many more chances we'll get to see somebody like that. Well,
Right.
all these bands, the bands that you're playing on your channel, uh, um, a lot of these people are sadly we're losing them.
Yeah.
Some people partied hard, other times it's just life. And at some point, how many bands are we going to get to go on stage with real live music, amps, guitars, drums, bass, and so you got to enjoy it while you can. I tell people, go out there and support these bands. I often say, you have no idea how far these bands came to see you. You think you had to drive a half hour? you should see how many damn planes I sit on every day and want to pull my hair out. And you know it because Britt is doing a lot of the same while I'm on tour with Piercy. She's on tour with Vixen. We do a lot of the same shows together. And
Yeah.
you see how many planes, because you go with her sometimes,
Yeah.
a long way. They travel 10 hours to play 30 minutes. And that's why I tell people, if you like this music and you want to be part of it, when they come to your town, go out and see it. I
Yeah.
think that's
Support
the
it.
best way to support it. Now,
You're
speaking
right.
of supporting music, we got to make sure we support your music because on your channel, you talk about all the other bands, but we got to make sure this is the record right here. This is Tommy London, Emotional Fuse. Now, this came out before the pandemic?
So there I am combing my hair, huh? Yeah, so I had the record done before the pandemic. I had released a single or two, and I was ready to roll with a bunch of shows in LA and New York and whatnot, different cities to drop the record right when the pandemic hit. Like that was like what, March of 2020. I had stuff booked for March, April, and May of 2020. And yeah, like I said, the pandemic hit. I pulled the record back. I didn't release it because I felt it would just get lost in all
Yeah.
the chaos that was going on, and I couldn't support it. And then when things started opening up, my guitar player, Matt Hogan, who produced the record, wrote the songs with me, he was like, "Hey, man, when are you going to put this record out?" And, I'm very much like Don King. Like, I'm a promoter. I want to promote this record the right way. I wanted certainty.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he doesn't come from that school, but he gets it. But he was like, "Yeah, but we're waiting even longer." And I said, "I know, but I'm waiting for that moment." And then I was like, he was right. Like, just put it out there and let's just start playing it, in which we did. And that was last year. I dropped it January of last year.
Mhm.
And what's funny when you put out a record too, man, I feel we live in a time now where it's really just about singles. Matter of fact, I don't know if you can see it here. Can you see that? I'm horrible with the camera. That's the
Hold
spindle,
on. Oh, yeah, I see it. Yeah.
right? Spindle on a 45 record. And I feel that's what it's come down to. It's like, it's really, you got to just put out the song, you milk the song, you give a clip, you give a teaser, then you give the whole thing, the real song, then you do a video, and then it's on to the next. Unless you're like a Rolling Stones or someone, if you drop a record, someone will soak it all in. And that's what's funny. So I put the album out, and I have my new single is going to come out soon, Wicked Ways, which is a song off the record. And I promise you that as soon as I put out that single with the video, people are going to be like, "Oh man, cool. When's the album going to come out?" Is it, you have an album out? Is this song on the album? Like, that's just how it is. So you can drop this record and still release the singles, and most, not all, but most will be none the wiser. And it's just
I'm
like,
with you 100%. I think we've gone back to sort of 1950s radio in a sense. Put out a single, let the single build. Put out 10 singles, you got an album.
right,
And also, one of the places they say people get their music the most is YouTube now. So, got to get those videos out. And you did that during the pandemic. You were putting out videos, you were putting out singles, and boom, boom, boom. Say, whoa, these are songs that were you kind of your songs have hooks. They got good choruses. You made
right,
fun videos, and by that you build an audience. Look, it doesn't hurt to be on Sirius XM. It doesn't hurt to be
right.
able to go out to these events. Of course, people want to know more, but I feel like you deliver the goods. I feel like the music is there, and
Thank you.
that's the big plus. I said to Keith Roth yesterday, I never promote something that I don't like. If I don't like it, I just say it's available now. But and by the way, I'm pleasantly surprised when I listen to something, before a show and go, "Hey, this is pretty good," or it's something that I'm going to listen to in my own time, you know, again. And so I think that people will enjoy this. I say it every show. Spotify, things like that, might not pay the artists the craziest amount of money, but boy, is it a way to get instant gratification. If you want to listen to
Right.
Tommy London's music right now, you can do it. You can literally log off here and listen to the music. And if you like it, go to his website, TommyLondon.com, buy a T-shirt, go to his appearances, things like that. There is an organic approach to it that people just you have to learn how to embrace it. Singles are here.
Right. No, you're
And
right. And I have people tell me all the time, how come you don't make it a CD or make it on or vinyl or put on a vinyl record? I thought about doing the vinyl, but what's funny, man, You have all these people who tell you, "Oh, if you had a CD, I'd buy one," and or you had a record, I'd buy one. And as soon as you make them,
You have a house full of records. Yeah.
yeah, where are they at? They're not buying them. It's funny. I mean, but I have thought about the putting it on the wax because I collect vinyl myself, and I think I want it on vinyl so I could just have a copy. But yeah,
I'm with you. I like that idea. My I don't know how long my record came out ago now, the Sin City Rejects punk record, but the I said we're gonna put a 7-inch out of the single that's the theme song to this show. And I said, I don't know if anyone's even gonna listen to it, but people love to collect as well. And a nice, cool colored vinyl and cool artwork. And I want to have one. And so I think that vinyl in some ways has just went to the top because of the collectability of it. Whereas I just don't think anyone needs a CD anymore.
yeah.
It's
What do you think about cassettes? They say that's kind of like a novelty.
I don't buy it. Do you? I don't
Nah.
believe it. I don't believe it's coming back. I think it's fun. I think kids like the idea, you know, and maybe some older people like the nostalgia of it. But would you ever want to play a cassette again?
You know, no. I have all my old cassettes somewhere in my
Mhm.
mom and dad's basement there. If I could find a decent boombox, maybe I'd throw a few cassettes here and there, but I would just need the boombox, not the cassettes. I wouldn't go searching for that. I do
Yeah,
like vinyl records though. And I do feel that record labels, if they brought down the cost of vinyl records, because it's like $40 sometimes, a little ridiculous, that they could probably make something happen with that stuff. But I don't know what the holdup is. Is it that they don't have the plants anymore, I guess?
well, there was less plants, and so it was and heavy competition because everyone wanted to get an album out, and they didn't have many places to make them. So to get quality vinyl takes a long time. It's on such back order.
Yeah,
You think they would open more? I mean, I think there's always people who are skeptical. Is the vinyl phase going to stay this time? I remember 1992, 93. I worked at a record store in Manhattan called Revolver Records, and it was on 8th Street and 6th Avenue, right across from Electric Lady Studios, Hendrix's. And I remember watching the vinyl just start to go. And American vinyl wasn't out. A lot of the bands you play on your channel, if you were post 91, 92, you didn't have an American release on vinyl. Other countries were still into it, but it ended. But then it came back, and now you go to Walmart and there's a vinyl section, and a lot of people buy the collectibles. It's funny. I was in a studio and I'm reading a magazine that said that people buy records. In the old days, you'd buy a record and it would come with a collectible. It was like a bonus. Now people buy the record to get the collectible. So whatever the bonus item is, a laminate, a poster, I got to have that. So then therefore they get the record. And so it's a whole new world of marketing and promoting to do this.
No, you're right. Can you still see me? I think I lost you.
No, I can see you. Yeah, I
Okay,
see
hold
you,
on.
and you're still moving, which is good. The storm hasn't hit just yet.
There we are. I'm back.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, no, I didn't see you there for a minute, but yeah, no storm yet. It looks like the wind has calmed down too, so I think I'll be okay.
Now, are you you're in Calabasas, you said. Is that where you live?
Yeah, I moved to Calabasas. The city boy left New York, and I moved out here to be with Britt Lightning.
Culture shock?
Well, I had been to California quite a few times. I'd never been to Calabasas until her and I were dating. We were going bi-coastal for a year, and then it was just time to cave. And the weather's much nicer out here. I can't stand cold weather anymore, man. I got to be honest. The older I get, I'm not shoveling shit. I don't want nothing to do with that snow. I can't.
I'm with you. Your blood thins out. Yeah, your blood thins out. When you move to the West Coast, all of a sudden your blood thins out. Now you go back east, you're going to be, oh my God, I'm freezing to death. Whereas before you dealt with it. Yeah, no more snow for me. I have less colds and all those things, and I'll always enjoy New York City and the time I spent half my life in New York. I spent the other half here in Vegas. And I'm enjoying warm weather and, in the twilight years, as they say. And it's also good to have a new experience. I also tell people New York is not the same city that I lived in, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's not the same.
No, you're right about that. I mean, especially after the pandemic, so many people left New York City, but besides that, you could go to a bar, or I could, you knew what haunt to go to on what night, where everyone be. Like I knew if you were living in New York, I know where you'd be on a Tuesday night, and that's where you would go to hang. And now those spots are not around. They're rare and far between. And a lot of those bars will close at midnight, man. I'd be out till 4 or 5 in the morning on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. That's just how it was. And to be honest with you, I would feel safe walking home. Now, right after the pandemic, man, it was weird. Like I didn't feel safe walking home. I'd always be looking behind my back, and it was a little shady,
Yeah.
So
that's what I've heard. I mean, I remember going to the Limelight on a Sunday night and getting out at 4, 5 in the morning. There's like no rules, You go to LA and they have 2 a.m. curfew. You go, what is this? But I've heard the same thing, that it's not as safe as it was, and there's a lot of issues, and so sometimes that's a shock for me to go back to New York and walk through crowded streets is unusual, because I walk here in Vegas and I don't see anybody. Even though they said missing persons said nobody walks in LA, I walked in LA too, and I never saw anybody, which was nice. But when you go to New York and you see these crowds of people, and then you're wondering which is the one that's crazy. Who's the one who's going to punch Rick Moranis or Steve Buscemi?
Right. That was nuts. That was during the pandemic. He got popped.
Yeah. Insane. So you got to be tough to live in New York, and I think it does. There is something to come from it. When you move somewhere, you definitely are street smart. When you see other people who are not, you're always aware. Doesn't matter where you are. If you're in New York, you're aware.
No, you're right. You know what, man? I'll be honest with you. Like I said, I was there from 98 until when the pandemic hit in 2020. And I'm not going to say this didn't happen. I'm not going to say it never happened. But in my circle of friends, I can honestly say it didn't happen, except maybe one time I can think of that I know a friend that got jumped. Okay. From 98 to 2020, that's a pretty good track record.
Oh, yeah.
I can name maybe one, maybe two that I can't think of off the top of my head. I can think of one guy I do know got jumped. And it does happen in other cities too, here or there. But after the pandemic, when things opened up, I can tell you 6 to 8 friends who all got jumped and mugged. And that's crazy to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to see that city figure out how to get it under control, but that's for smarter people than you and I suppose.
Yeah.
It's not on our pay level, but there is a great thing to be part of New York at those scenes, and I'm definitely grateful that I was. And now we see other things. Now I see music scenes in every city, yourself as well. When you travel with these things, you get to see different scenes. You get to see people who really are hungry for this music. Now, tell me where people. What is your schedule on Sirius XM?
So at the moment, I'm on mornings on Ozzy's Boneyard during the week. I'm filling in because Katie Babbs, who's on Turbo, it's a whole switcheroo going on. Katie Babbs had a baby. She's on Turbo and Octane. So that means Shannon Guns, who's on Ozzy's Boneyard in the morning, she's filling in for her. So I'm filling in for Shannon. Did you get all that? I'm going to test you later, Jason. So, my schedule, Ozzy's Boneyard in the mornings, weekday mornings, and then weekend afternoons. And I'm on Hair Nation, 39 on the dial there every night of the week, except Saturday night when I'm on Classic Rewind, channel 25.
Gotcha. Listen, you turn on the Hair Nation, at least you got a 50-50 chance Tommy London's on.
Yeah.
If it's prime time, and if you watch it on your TV like I do, you got to look at Tommy's face the whole time, which is not, listen, not a bad face to look at. There's a lot worse. I won't name any other personalities, but he's on, and you can find that. Before I let you go, Tommy, I got to ask you, what was an interview that you did or someone you met that really stood out to you? If you had to pick one that was really a big moment for you personally.
A big moment for me personally, or probably my favorite interview.
Give me both, because I think those are both great questions.
Because they're not together. My favorite interview, I'll tell you that one first. My favorite interview was Nuno Betancourt of Extreme. He just was so honest. And all right. So whenever I get a lot of these interviews, I'm told ahead of time that I only have them for like 20, 30 minutes tops, right? When they stay on with me, like Nuno was with me for an hour. Alice Cooper stayed with me for an hour. That tells me that either they just have nothing else to do, or which is probably not the case, or they enjoy the conversation they're having with me. And I like to think it's that. And he was just so open and so cool with me and just so laxed. And it was a lot. It was like talking to a buddy. It was a lot of fun. Brett Michaels was a lot like that too. I've become good friends with Brett since. Stephen Piercy as well. Stephen and I would talk here, and then all of a sudden we're exchanging numbers and shooting the shit all the time, you know? Nikki Sixx from Motley Crue was a really good one. This was probably one of my favorites because when I interviewed Nicky, it was the same thing. I told him I only had him for like 20 minutes. When we were done the interview, or about to be done, so his manager was on the Zoom as well as my manager. You don't see or hear them. It's only us, but they're on there, right? And his manager said to him, "Nicky, you got 5 minutes." And Nicky said, "No, we're good. I enjoyed talking to him. We're just going to keep talking." And I just thought that was the coolest thing because I love Motley Crue. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. And we stayed on for another 15 minutes, you know? John Bon Jovi was a great one too. I guess he enjoyed conversations with me. Now he has me as part of his channel. So I'm also doing Bon Jovi Radio where I talk to him all the time. And I'm a huge Kiss fan. So that's probably one of my faves when I got to sit down with Paul Stanley and talk to him. But, you know, I'll be honest with you, man. I love what I do. I'm very fortunate and grateful for the job to be able to talk to these heroes of mine that were all over my walls when I was a kid, and to play their music and be carrying the torch for their music. I'm very proud of that. And there's not a day that goes by that I just don't realize how lucky I am to have the job, you know?
Yeah, and you're spreading the word, and these artists know that they know you're knowledgeable. One, no one stays in a conversation if they don't want to. From I don't know, there's a few hundred interviews on this channel of mine, and sometimes people would say, "I didn't know that this was going to be a real interview." You know, they're used to people saying, "So you were in Leatherwolf? What was that like?" You know, or whatever the band is.
Right.
But when you carry a conversation and you're prepared and you listen, people want to be part of it. And then it's not just I'm promoting something, but I'm having a good conversation about it and maybe thinking of things that I haven't thought of before. And so the people that you named are such great personalities: Paul Stanley, Brett Michaels. These are people who, but they've done this every day of their life. And so to have that connection where they said, this guy knows, I want to keep talking,
Right.
keep, promoting. And so that's a great thing. And it's so cool. Now the next question that's the natural follow-up to this is, who would you want to talk to? Who's the person that you haven't got yet, but you'd like to?
And this, would it be in the genre of music or just
No, I
anything?
think anything.
Hmm. Wow. Well, I'm a huge Van Halen fan. I
Mhm.
would love to talk to I did talk to Sammy Hagar before. I would love to talk to David Lee Roth. I think it would, honestly, as much as I would love to talk to David Lee Roth, I have a feeling I'd be extremely disappointed
Mhm.
because I just think sometimes you shouldn't meet your heroes. And I just feel he'd talk to me in riddles and I wouldn't know what the hell's going on. So maybe I shouldn't put that out there. But Alex Van Halen would be great. I would love to talk to him.
He's
I've
got a
met
book.
Michael
He's
Anthony. He's
got a book.
awesome.
Yeah, he's got a book to promote. Michael Anthony is out there as well. He's supposed to be on this show at some point to talk about his hot sauce line and some other cool stuff. So it is fun to talk to the people. There's people I've had on this show, and I'm sure you relate to this, that are not the biggest names, but they were important to me. Growing up in New York City, Cheetah Chrome with the Dead Boys was a big
Oh
deal.
yeah.
I knew it wasn't going to get a million views, but I knew that we could have a good conversation. And I think the key to interviews and things like that is being able to have a good conversation that anyone could watch, not just a fan of the band you're interviewing. Paul Stanley is a really interesting guy. I had great New York conversations with him. We were at a charity event. We were backstage, and I said, I'm going to talk to him. And we started talking about New York, and we started talking about how I grew up on Seaman Avenue, and Seaman Avenue has a cross street, Cumming Street. And this is all real. And it's in the basketball diaries because that's where Jim Carroll lived.
Yeah.
And Paul Stanley goes, well, do you remember Dykeman? Which he was right. And then the Cloisters. Then it turned out that we went to the same kindergarten or public school, obviously years apart. But we went into this long, deep New York conversation that you can only have with a real New Yorker. And then you also remember that this is Paul Stanley of Kiss. And so,
Yeah.
the art of conversation is such a lost thing. When you hear someone do an interview and they're thinking about what their next question is,
Well,
that that
you're right about the New York thing. I met Steve Stevens, who I've always loved with Billy Idol. He plays guitar for Billy, for anyone who doesn't know. And I met Steve Stevens at an interview I had done. He was part of the interview panels. Him, J5, John 5, Ozzy Osbourne, and just all part of this huge interview. Well, with Billy Morrison, it was his record, Billy Morrison's record. And Billy's awesome. He works with me on Ozzy's Boneyard. Such an awesome guy. He also plays in Billy Idol's band. And Steve Stevens and I, after the interview, just hit it off because he's from New York. He's from Brooklyn. And we were talking about all these places that don't exist anymore in New York. And we just hit it off. It was just, I didn't want to stop talking to him about it, And he's like, how about this place? Whatever happened to this one? And it was a lot of fun, man. That New York City connection is just always good,
Yeah, absolutely. When I have a New Yorker on the show, I go, okay, I think I'm going to relate to this person just because we have this this East Coast attitude, which is a good thing to say. Well, Tommy, I appreciate it. Here we are. It's been an hour. I've enjoyed chatting with you. I look forward to seeing you again on the road. Sirius XM. You've mentioned. I said you turn it on anytime. You'll find Tommy London. Go to TommyLondon.com. You'll find out more there. Listen to his music there as well. Emotional Fuse available. Listen to the singles. Go watch the videos and support because Tommy's out there supporting all this music for you, promoting it. So let's give a listen to his. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, brother. I was looking forward to this, and I look forward to seeing you on the road again soon.
Yes, I'll see you soon. And thank you, everyone, for watching. Make sure you